In today's video, I'm going to show this Colt's first day, first lesson, first everything of training here with me. As you can tell, man, he's already halter broke. He's actually really gentle, and he's a good Colt to show in this video. So real quick, I just heard on a podcast called Be Your Best Horsemanship by Phil Haugen that when you build a brick house, you can't cheat on the first layer of bricks because that's your foundation for everything else that you're building on. So again, Be Your Best Horsemanship by Phil Haugen. Man, listen to that podcast. It's pretty awesome. Anyway, using that analogy, this is the foundation that we're going to build everything else on. Okay, and that foundation is two things: getting a horse to move out and getting a horse to stop. So that's what we're going to start working with on lesson number 1. Getting a horse to move out, getting a horse to stop. Now that first thing, getting him to move out, we can dissect that and we can get into several different types of methods and philosophies, and that's not really what we're going to go over here. I'm just going to kind of demonstrate what I've been doing, what I think works really good, and for that demonstration, I'm going to be using this square pen. It's a calving pen here in the barn. It does got a little straw in it yet. We'll have to pitch that out so the footing gets better. But again, this is just day number 1. I kind of walked this horse in here, walked him around, let him see everything before I get going. But what I want to do and what I'm looking for is that horse follows his nose. Okay, so that right underneath getting him to move out, step number 1 is getting him to follow his nose. And the shape that I want him to follow his nose in is a circle. Okay, I don't want him to follow his nose, of course, going to each corner of this square pen. I want him to make his own natural circle by following that nose. So how I'm teaching him that is I'm just gonna lead his nose out ahead of him, and I'm gonna drive his rear end by slapping him on the butt. And there's several different ways a guy can get this done. I mean, some people use a rope to drive them off, some people use a stick, but here in this small tight pen, I'm just gonna lead him basically with my one hand, and I'm gonna tap him on the butt so that he knows that means I need him to go forward. This transitions into the saddle really well. I think that you can reach down and you can lead that head around in a circle, and a lot of times you can either slap their butt a little bit with your hand, or you can start to use your inside foot. But either way, that's going to be the first motion that I'm going to ask him for when I get in the saddle. I think a lot of you guys probably, if you're watching this video, you probably started some Colts before, and you've, the way I used to do it too is, I'd get up on there and I'd get them to flex to the left and flex to the right, and I'd maybe use that inside foot and kick their rear end around, so they might step to the right, might step to the left. But getting them to move forward was always a challenge. I mean, I've had people chase me with a flag. I've hung on and just kind of went to yipping and yapping and slapping my leg and getting them to run or jump out from underneath me. But this method that I kind of started doing about 5 years ago, I feel like is about the easiest way, simplest way to get these horses to move out once I get them on saddles. So again, this is kind of a simple lesson, but it's a very important lesson. It's that foundation, it's that first layer, it's what you're going to build everything else upon. So that's kind of what I'm working on here, is leading that nose out and around in a circle and driving his butt with my hand. This Colt, it took him a couple times to figure it out, going to the left, but then going to the right, he was actually really natural. So real quick about this too, when you're leading their head around in a circle, you're not just kind of jipping them around and letting them go in any sort of circle. I want their nose, their front feet, their rib cage, and their back feet all in the same line and in the same shape in the curve of that circle. So again, I really do think that this helps soften their rib cage once you get in the saddle, and you're out riding or you're wanting them to lope a circle, like you can go right back to that foundation of this groundwork and get them to follow their nose, soften that rib cage, and then it just makes them easier to put a handle on them. So again, I'm gonna go to the right here in this video, and he's a little more natural, I think, going to the right than he was going to the left. But what I'm gonna start working towards in this exercise is that I don't have to constantly be pushing him to go in that circle. What I want eventually, and what I'm working towards, is that when I lead that horse in a circle and ask him to move out, he's gonna go that speed, no faster, no slower, and he's not gonna try stopping. He's just gonna follow my cue and go around in that circle. Now, this really transitions well into the saddle, because when you start leading them around, then they're not just gonna grab their tail and kind of run. They're used to you leading them around, guiding them, and you're building that trust for them to just start to move out from underneath you. So that's kind of step number one. Like I said, getting him to move out, getting him to follow his nose, and softening that rib cage there by using the circle in the square pen. Now, kind of moving on to the second part of this is getting a horse to stop. If you notice, like if he does what I'm asking him to do, if he moves out on his own without me having to constantly slap his butt, I'll let him move a little bit, and then before he stops on his own, before he makes me correct him, before he does any of that, I want to reward him for those 2, 3, 4 steps, or those 2, 3, 4 circles he made, whatever it is. I want to stop him before he basically screws up again. But I'm going to stop him and reward him. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to pull his head around, and I'm going to ask him to move his butt away from me so that he's completely facing me. And that's how we get him started with the one rein stop. So that when I'm on him, if something scares him, if something happens, I'm gonna pull on that one rein, and he's gonna know to kind of move his butt around, stop his front feet, and he's gonna hold still and bring that head around. Now, another step to this is the more I get advancing, like petting him on the back, petting him on the belly, petting him down his legs, or jumping on a side to side, and maybe even crawling up on his back. I'm putting him in all these sorts of uncomfortable situations, and I want him to bring that head around and touch me on the body, the leg, anywhere, to communicate with me that I'm pushing it too far. Like I've gone far enough. So again, I want to stop the exercise before I scare him or before I push him to do something, like Phil Haugen would say in his podcast, to react, right? Like I want him to be thinking and not reacting. So that's why I'm asking him before I stop, like jumping, or before I stop laying on his back. I'm kind of teaching him and showing him to bring his nose around, touch me, and then I'll stop. And this works good on horses that are kind of flighty, kind of spooky, and kind of in survival mode, because they're not going to want you to be jumping around, and for dang sure aren't going to be wanting you to jump on their back and things like that. And if you can teach them to kind of always bring that head around, and as soon as they do and they touch you and you release your pressure and stop that exercise and let them relax, they're going to really lean on that way of communication. And I've seen that work with several horses. And once we get on their back, that's going to even work again, because if they get spooked, or if something's not right, or they want to start reacting or jumping into that survival mode, you can bring that head around, and they know that pressure means that they need to bring their head around, touch your leg, and then they can stop, and you can pet them, and you can calm them down, or you can step off the saddle, and you can help them out. Now, kind of the reason behind a lot of this kind of stuff, getting them to move forward and getting them to stop, is because that's basically, in a nutshell, all we're doing with these horses when we ride them. We're asking these horses to move underneath us in a controlled way, the way we're asking them to move, and then we're also asking them to stop, even if they don't think they want to. We're just trying to get them to follow our commands, trust us, and these are the foundation steps for that. So again, this colt is a really good horse for this demonstration. Not every horse is like this. Some of them can be a little bit more flighty, a little bit bronchier, and hopefully later on we'll get a video to demonstrate some of that type of method and how we get them guys calmed down. But I basically use the same thing. It just takes a lot more time. It takes maybe more lessons of this, and I might not get quite as far. Like this horse here, he's standing good enough, he's being good and gentle. I'm just gonna kind of jump up on his back, get him to reach around, and just again reinforce that, bending that nose around while I'm jumping up on him there, because I do believe that if we can get these horses to just stand plumb still, and we can bring that head around, and we can get on them safely, and we can get off them safely, man, that's half the battle. So again, just to talk a little bit more about this horse, we do got a couple bum calves in this barn, and my boys are up there feeding them and kind of talking and doing different things. You might hear the sound of the side-by-side in the background, but it's all good for this horse. I mean, he's handling it well. His attention is kind of going to those other things, so that's kind of where I just try to keep bringing it back to me, and especially, you know, if his attention gets too far away from me, I'll just walk him around in this circle again, you know, and ask him to do some sort of activity just to bring his mind back to the, as Phil Haugen would say again, the thinking side of his brain, because I don't want his attention on those boys feeding them calves, or on them calves farting around in that pen, because then I feel like I'm gonna, if I slip up on him and he's like, oh, I didn't see that happen, you know, he's gonna react to that by spooking or doing something I don't want him to do. So again, just to kind of bring his attention back to me, I'm not gonna jerk on the lead rope or do anything like that. I'm just gonna go back to that exercise, leading him in that circle, slapping him on that butt, making him move out. As you can tell, I do like to jump up on both sides, jumping up and down. I really do like jumping and laying up on their back. It's something I hadn't done until about 10 years ago. I got these Chris Cox DVDs, so if you like to listen to things, I would look up Phil Haugen's Be Your Best Horsemanship podcast. If you like to watch things and you're kind of a more visual learner, I'd recommend the Chris Cox DVDs. I really like that, jumping up and laying on their backs like that. And I know several guys do that. That was just the first time I saw it. And then again, if you like to read things, like I read a lot. I guess this method with the square pen, and getting them to bend in that circle and that shape, a lot of that came from a book I read called Fear-Free Horse Training by Neil Davies. So I'd also recommend that book too. But so if you guys are looking for more material, things to watch, things to read, or things to listen to, Phil Haugen on the podcast, Chris Cox on the DVDs, and Neil Davies' book are kind of the three things that I use to continue my education and continue my learning, so that I can just better communicate with these horses here. Again, it sure helps having a real gentle gelding to get started with. If you do notice in the video, his attention moves back and forth from me to them other things, just whatever it is, and you're gonna have that. But main thing is just don't quite let up until you get the response you're wanting. As far as, like, if I'm bringing that head around, you know, I'm not gonna let him go. He might move his feet, he might do whatever, but until he stops his feet, moves that head around, I'm not gonna give up. So I kind of end this day the same way I started it, walking him around that pen, just telling him good job, and we're gonna move on.